Welcome to the Afghanistan Project podcast. I'm your host, Beth Bailey, and my guest today is Hamayun Khan, an author, independent researcher, financial professional, and education advocate. He's the founder of SolaTeach, an online initiative educating Afghan girls in English and professional skills. His writing focuses on Afghanistan's socio-economic and financial landscape, with work featured in The National Interest, the Diplomat, and the Migration Policy Institute. He has authored The Death Within, along with several book chapters, peer-reviewed papers, and op-eds, contributing to Afghanistan's financial and economic development and policy. It is so great to have you here. You clearly have a depth of knowledge about Afghanistan that I can only hope to have. So it's really a pleasure to have you here today, Hamayun. Thank you.
Yeah, it's all pleasure. Pleasure is all mine, and thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Well, to get started, I would love to hear about your journey to the U.S. You know, you are here, and I know very little about how you came to be here. So please tell my audience, what path you followed to get here and what that journey was like for you.
Yeah, sure. Like my whole life has been in exile. Originally, I'm from the northern province of Kunduz in Afghanistan, but I spent considerable time in Pakistan as a refugee, and then in 2015 I got a scholarship to go to India, and then I earned my Bachelor's of Business Administration degree, followed by a Master's of Business Administration. And then in 2019, my family and I moved to the US, of course, to find better opportunities, to have access to quality education and quality work life. So in 2019, when I moved to the US, I started my professional career as a finance professional. And then during this time, as you mentioned, I have been involved in education advocacy, independent research and writing, focusing on Afghanistan's socio-economic landscape. And then also I was fortunate to attend several conferences and workshops, including the World Bank Youth Summit, which I've been part of for 2 years, for 2023 and 2024. So what brought us to the US was mainly, as I mentioned, quality education. I recently earned my second master's in international business from George Washington University. I always used to say to my colleagues and to my classmates that, George Washington University was once a dream for us, and we would use it as an example. Like if someone was intelligent, we would say, oh, he's a George Washington University graduate, or he's a Harvard University graduate. And now I literally earned my degree from this prestigious institute, and that too in my the field that I'm most interested in. And it's like a daydream and a dream coming into a reality and turning into a reality. So, like education, second is like to work for an international organization, which has always been my dream, which I have been part of this, Counterpart International, working on USAID funded projects. All these ambitions are something that basically brought us to the US.
Incredible. And I think it's really amazing that then you took all of the considerable great things that you learned through that process of being in India and then being here, and now you're helping Afghan women who can't get education. And I'd love to hear about how that started and what you've been doing, while obviously, for anyone who is listening and doesn't know, that's not something that is easy or allowed to be done. And so you have to be careful about how you discuss those things. So you protect your students because they need that education. And I'm so amazed that you're doing it. So please go ahead.
Yeah. So, back in 2022, we were hearing all these news coming from Afghanistan that, the doors of schools and colleges and universities were slowly closing for girls and women. And I was looking at the GDP of Afghanistan. It was just drastically lowering because of the lack of women participation in like businesses and work, and as well as education. So I, along with my friends, came up with this idea in 2023. We started thinking about doing something for the girls back in Afghanistan that are in need of help. So we started this initiative called SolaTeach. Sola in Pashto means peace. Through this platform, we have been educating girls through virtual platforms like Google Meet and Zoom with their basic English proficiency, and to gain basic professional skills. For example, how to write, how to speak. Starting from writing emails to applying for universities and applying for jobs, and luckily we have been able to uh, have a positive impact. For example, few of my students, they got admission in the University of People with full scholarship, and they study bachelor's degrees with full scholarships. And also I heard that one of my students got a scholarship from India to study her bachelor degree through fully funded scheme. And then I heard that a few of them, they got internships as well. And literally, like when I started this initiative, at the initial point, like there was mm, like when I was observing, many of them, they could not even speak a small sentence in English. And then after some time, I was kind of evaluating the progress, and I was amazed by how you know to some extent fluent they were. They could literally translate languages, sentences from Pashto and Dari to English. But this initiative is like, we do not publicize it for several reasons. And like I feel really satisfied to see how good they are doing, like how well they are doing with their skills and with their, you know, um, like with everything. Like they have been learning a lot, and they're happy and they're thankful for the things that we are doing voluntarily for the last 1.5 years.
Wow, that's really amazing. I've been fortunate enough to look in on some of those like classes, not with SolaTeach, but with other groups that are teaching Afghan girls and women. And it is incredible to see the hope and to see how quickly these girls are catching on, because it's not, when you take something away from someone, they want it that much more. And that's
Yes,
the thing, is
exactly.
these girls are on fire. The
Yeah.
Taliban have done the worst thing they could possibly do, right? They have
I mean, they're
taken.
resilient. They
Oh
never
yeah,
give up.
it's
Yeah.
really amazing. And I know that that's not true of everyone, right? There is a lot of depression, and not everyone can get into classes like that. There
Yeah.
is a
Yeah.
lot of hopelessness still. But for the girls who are able to get that kind of access, I mean, they are
Yeah.
unstoppable, and they are a force to be reckoned with. You mentioned, and I wondered if this would be something we could talk about, the socioeconomic impact of not having women be part of the income generating class. How much has that hurt Afghanistan?
Well, in the first week of the collapse in 2021, um, there was like around 700,000 job loss, and that was terrific. That was like, I mean, terrible. And uh, you could see like the prospect of Afghanistan's economic landscape from that point on. And so far, uh, I was going through all these statistics of how much the job market has been hurt, because I think, if I'm not wrong, almost 50% of the parliamentarians, they were women, and they were running small and medium enterprises, so they could contribute a lot to the GDP. So when they were banned from work and from education, the GDP was worse, and I think from 24% and something, it was lowered to some 14%, and more or less. So it was like a drastic decline. But some, like, in the years following the collapse, like in 2022 and 2023, the GDP a little bit, it increased, but not that much as it was expected, because there was zero participation of women. And recently in 2024, the leadership announced that they were not allowed to go to medical institutes, which is the core, like the most important aspect, the most important thing in a country, especially in Afghanistan, where access to education and access to healthcare is quite limited. And I think that was also something which we all were worried about. So, like, the lands, we do have natural resources. I think around 3 trillion or something worth of dollar natural reserves Afghanistan has, which is untapped, meaning which is not being used. But if the government relies on that resources without any proper utilization or backup plan, I think we could go to suffer the Dutch disease, which is unemployment, which Afghanistan has already been suffering of. And then there will be like shortage of labor force, because everyone will go and work in the mining sector, leaving other sectors empty. So there will be like kind of imbalance between all the sectors in terms of labor participation. And the other thing that the current leadership is doing to help the economy revive is the taxes and revenue, income, the taxes collection, and because they have imposed a great percentage of taxes on small businesses, and they're collecting that revenue from customs and from other businesses. But I think, like, if there is the income capita is low, like if the people do not have anything, any proper source of income, then I think it would be like a very weird idea of collecting taxes, because they do not have any source of income. And then on the other hand, the current establishment, they collect all this great portion of taxes and revenue. So reliance on selling mines and natural resources plus revenue collection from people and from customs will not work, because if since the government has not been recognized, and there's like a limited trade engagement with regional and other countries. So they're like the sources of income are less versus and on the other hand, they have no proper backup plan. And then they're always like suppressing people, especially women. So it's like you get confused of like what are they up to. So I think the economy is at the worst. It's and the verge, I would say, the verge of crisis, and it's like declining drastically. So yeah, overall, like the impacts are really adverse when it comes to economy, education, and every sector.
Yeah, you bring up the midwife and nursing training. That to me was just it's like you said, that was the most horrible thing they could do, because in some provinces women can't go to male doctors. And so what you
Yeah.
want, and I've heard, I remember early after the Taliban took control, this Taliban fighter was interviewed by a very prestigious online magazine. I wish I could remember which one it was. And he said, he wasn't interviewed, I'm sorry. He had told a midwife, women don't need you, God will help you. And I'm sorry, as a woman who's been through labor twice, it was not God who brought those children into the world. It was trained medical staff. And that was why Afghanistan had such high maternal mortality rates. And I know that the Taliban don't care about women. They don't care if women die in childbirth.
Yeah,
But they
because they
should,
say like, what
but
would people do hundreds of years ago?
right, but infants would died more too. There was a higher infant
Yeah, yeah,
mortality rate as
yeah,
well, and that's the future of Afghanistan. So if the Taliban truly cared about the future of the country, they would not have cut that training that is going to protect women. But the Taliban don't think about things in a logical way, obviously, because they're
yeah,
not looking at what the
unfortunately.
things that they've done, how they've harmed their economy, their people. They keep saying that, oh, well, no, there's no suicide here. If you
Yeah,
talk to any NGO that's tracking that, they are tracking huge numbers, but the Taliban say that there is none. So you can't trust a thing that comes out of the
true.
leadership of
Exactly.
that country right now. I'm glad to have you talking about the economy. That's something that is so important and so often neglected because we're looking at the people who are just dying and getting slaughtered on a daily basis, but that's a really important thing to look at too.
Yeah,
There's so much to this, and
yeah,
I want
unfortunately.
to talk about your book and
Sure.
tell my audience, please, like what made you want to write it, and why was that subject important to you?
Well, when I was in India in 2018, pursuing my master's degree, uh, next to my room in the dormitory that I was staying in, there was an 18 years old student of computer science who committed suicide, and I literally saw the letter that he had written for his parents, and the letter said that I'm a failed student, I'm a failed son, and I'm sorry. And it was really heartbreaking when I saw that letter. And unfortunately, he was the friend of my best friend. And then, and consequently, after that incident in 2019, another student, same first year student of computer science in the same room, he committed a suicide. And then I was really worried and shocked, like what is going on? And everybody was literally blaming the student. For example, they were saying, "Oh, his parents have spent this much money, and they are having hopes of their son." And nobody would talk about the why question. Like, why would he do that? Why would a person in such a fragile age commits a suicide and puts an end to his life? So I was discussing this with my friend, and at that time I used to write articles for a local magazine on the financial issues of Afghanistan. And then he asked me to write something on this issue, and I was like, no, if I write something, maybe I would face a backlash because this is a sensitive issue, and I know the reason. The reasons are cultural and you know religious principles, like the misuse of religious principles and cultural codes. I mean, there is nothing wrong with God forbids religion or culture. They are sacred, but what is wrong with them is the misuse, like the way they are perceived and they are taught. So I started collecting data, and I was like, this is an important issue because, including myself, every second teenager, every second youngster has passed through all these inner sufferings. They're fighting, a hidden enemy within them that nobody knows about it, like not even their closed ones, not even their family members. And so, when I came to the US in 2019, um, of course, like I was starting my career and there was no help to get into the industry. So obviously I went through some depression and inner sufferings, and anxiety, like what would I do, where will I end up. And so there was a point where I was discussing this with my mother, like, what is the use of this master degree if I don't have a proper job? And she was like, no, just you have worked hard and there will be some place for you. So I was going through this anxiety, and then I thought of like writing this book. Like I had this all the data and in rough form. So I started working on the book, and then it was kind of therapy. And then on the other hand, I was thinking maybe it would help someone else, like I was sharing my experience. So when I during writing the book, like I started to survey teenagers from Afghanistan and also those in the US, of like what if, like, I just wanted to know if they were going through some inner suffering or like anxiety or depression, and what could be the reason. And surprisingly, 90 to 100, I would say, to 100, almost 100% of the reasons were like societal pressure, uh, you know, parental expectations, people's opinions, and then some misuse of religious principles. And like every teenager that I would ask for the survey were sharing the same, like almost same, if not the exact answers, but they were like similar answers. They were fighting the similar enemy, and I was surprised. So there was kind of a trigger that motivated me to write something about this issue. Though it was not related to my own field, it's like something related to anthropology or psychology. But as a teenager, I was kind of feeling responsible to, if not me, like who will write or who will do something. And although this issue is considered very sensitive in communities like mine and other South Asian communities, because we have had several incidents where when you challenge the beliefs of masses, you face backlash and severe consequences. So I was like, okay, let me take this step. And when I published the book, it was mostly welcomed and everyone liked it. And they were asking me to, write the Pashto version of this book because it's needed. So this was the journey of how I, started to write the book.
That's so incredible. And were you able to translate it into Pashto?
Well, not yet because I've been busy with writing articles, and I was also busy with my master's degree. So now I'm planning to start translating the book by the end of this year.
Do you think that those lessons would be able to help, the young
Well, of
women
course,
of
yeah.
Afghanistan? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, 10 years ago, the situation was different. Like, it was quite different. I still remember when we were kids, speaking in front of elders were considered a sign of disrespect, which is really funny. I mean, we were kids and we could not speak in front of elders because we were not allowed to speak, because they were considered it as a sign of disrespect, because it was only the elders that were allowed to speak, and the youngsters were not allowed to give their opinions regardless of their qualification or their logic or their intellect. Like, it doesn't matter how logical the opinion was from the youngster, as long as he's a youngster or she's a youngster, they're not supposed to speak up or give their opinions, because that's one issue which is kind of deteriorating day by day. And now, like, I believe if I translate this book, or if someone else writes something similar in Pashto, it will be welcomed because, like, every second teenager goes through the same problem, and everyone wants their voices to be heard, to be, someone has to speak for them. So if like I still remember when I post something on social media which is related to societal issues, it is welcomed, mostly welcomed by the teenagers, and they like it. And many of them tell me like, oh, okay, we cannot say anything because of all these issues surrounding us, but it's good that you do. And not only me, like there are social media influencers from Afghanistan. When they speak something like this, like many youngsters like it. I rarely see any negative comments, so I'm sure it will make a difference, and of course positive difference.
Yeah, that would be an incredible thing to be able to do. And yeah, it's a common issue everywhere, right? It's slightly morphed, but I think that that message is so important to that age group. And I'd love to hear, you sent over some really interesting bullet points about the main themes of what you have found. And I'd love to hear more about those. And, maybe it'll cause listeners to think about how that relates to their own situation. I mean, it's something I have in the last few weeks. Suicide has been a topic on this podcast because of the hopelessness that people are feeling in these executive orders. So I want, this is, even if your area of study is on a particular group of people impacted by this, it's still a universal theme that I think people can probably glean some really important information about, or some things that they might apply to their own selves. So I want to start, you already mentioned, religious beliefs and cultural codes, but can you get into detail about how those are used and what the problems are there?
Yeah, I mean, as I just mentioned, like two main factors: the misuse of religious principles or cultural codes. There are like many issues. If I go much deeper, there are like hundreds of issues. But what I have experienced and what I have discovered in my book, like when I was writing the book and I was collecting data, um, one basic aspect is the comparison of like one's child with other. For example, if uh, there is a kid who's good at soccer, his parents might compare him with someone who's good at math, which is like illogical. And while that kid is compared with others who are good at academics or other scientific books, his or her self-esteem is deteriorated. Uh, he starts to lose his self-esteem, his self-confidence, and then because like he starts to feel a kind of inferiority complex issues. He thinks like, okay, I'm like he, that other boy who's better in math than me is better in everything, because the respect and the value that is given to the kids is measured by the societal status quo, like the societal beliefs. So comparison is something which literally kills the abilities, the innate skills of kids and teenagers. For example, I always use this example. If we ask a monkey, a duck, and a frog to climb a tree, who will do it? Like, of course, monkey will be better at it. But then, if we ask them to, dive into a pond or a pool, the monkey will be the loser. So the same applies to us humankind. Like not everyone is good at math, and nobody can be like a top grader. Like nobody can get A in every subject. Some will be good at math, some will be good at sports, and some will be good at like other subjects. And second issue is the lack of confidence and the self-esteem, which I just mentioned. For example, the kids that are always judged by the societal validation. For example, uh, we like I myself was grown up in a society where societal validation was important for everything. For example, If I did something which was out of uh, the scope that the society wanted, I was being judged, regardless of how good it was or how beneficial it was, but I was judged negatively because the society did not want it. And then, even like those in my acquaintance, they were also judging me based on what the society were thinking of me. Because they were not thinking of, okay, this, the thing that he's doing, it's beneficial for him in the long run, so we should not care about the society. But the case was different in here. They were always judging me based on what the society were thinking, because we are always thinking about what other people will think, and then we do something. So when, as kids, when we grow up, we are always kind of mentally dependent on others. We cannot decide by our own. We cannot make decisions. And then I've seen, like, when I went to India for my bachelor degree, and I could not stand up in front of the class. I had stage fear because of the lack of confidence, and I used to skip presentations. That was like this, the worst of consequences that I was going through, and I knew it was because of all these codes and all this status quo. Because if, as kids, if we were allowed to speak, if we were allowed to do what we were good at, and if we were being motivated in doing what we were interested in, we would have self-confidence, we would have self-esteem, and we could do anything. Like we would literally excel in what we would do once we grow up. But these are all the issues that that are like hurdles to our career growth, to our as I have mentioned in my book, to our inner peace. Because not only do these things halt our path towards achieving our goals, but also they're kind of hurdles to our inner peace. Many kids, like I just mentioned about the two youngsters in India that committed suicide. Like, why would someone do this at this young age? Just because the society and sometimes the family have given them the feeling that, no, what we want you to do, you should do that, and that's the right path, regardless of what you think, what you are interested in, and what you want. That doesn't matter. So that's the reason the teenagers are stuck between two extremes. And on the one hand, their own career aspirations and interests, and on the other hand, it's the family, the society, societal pressures and all. And then they decide to find peace, and they reach the point where they think, okay, now death is the only source of peace, and that's the reason they commit suicide.
And I want to say too, you mentioned this in the notes that you sent me, and it's something that I have seen in Afghan culture, unfortunately, for a long time for young women. You mentioned the stricter control that they face under the guise of family honor and societal dignity, and they need peace too, and they don't get it. Especially, people have asked me, why do Afghan girls douse themselves in cooking liquid and try to set themselves on fire? And that's a hard question to answer. You would need to get into that young girl's head. But I can imagine that if I were forced to marry at the age of 14 perhaps, and had my mother-in-law and my father and all of the family who were living in that house berating me constantly and telling me I'm no good, I would also probably think I need to find some peace right now, and it's not
Yeah.
going to be here, and I can't leave. I don't have
Yeah.
any agency. So tell me about that stricter control and what that does to young girls who don't have the ability to maybe go to school and find that future for themselves, where they are able to kind of self-actualize and do what they're hoping to
Well,
do.
I think it's more horrible than what words can describe. because like I always empathize with them. I have sympathy with them because being in surrounded by the four walls, and then you have to do what others want you to do, like a puppet. You are mentally controlled like a spawn. You are like a puppet. You cannot decide by your own. And like I sometimes I cannot imagine living with someone who I do not want to. I cannot just imagine spending a single day. But hats off to them for accepting all these pressures, societal codes, like the disquest codes and principles, and then they adhere to accepting all the things just to spend their whole life with someone they never thought of, they never knew before. And it's like a lottery. It's like a lottery that uh, whoever is lucky, they will get a nice person, and then vice versa. But I really have empathy with them, and the life that they go through is I do not have words to explain it. But uh, fortunately, I would say now this generation is aware of what is going on, because including myself, they have visited countries like India or the Europe or the West, and they have seen what is going on, and they're questioning what's happening there back in my country. And The only thing that I wanted to mention is the ability to critically think. Like this generation is, they're having the ability to critical thinking, and they criticize all these flaws in what is being considered as the cultural norms. But as far as the lives of the girls is concerned, I think these days will pass, and because we believe that every hardship is followed by ease, and then there will be a time where they can speak up for themselves. They can decide who to live with. There will be no kind of dictatorship in the families who only wants all the youngsters, regardless of whoever they are, not only girls, even the boys are suffering of this, by the name of honor or by the name of codes and culture. They will not be misused, and they will not be exploited for their own kind of maintaining their own image in the society, just to be considered as a very obedient person of the culture. For example, there are many elders, just to have their image saved, they exploit the teenagers. They impose all these disquest codes over teenagers. Like, okay, for example, um, uh, if I'm an elder, I would want my youngsters to marry the person that I want for them, regardless of if they want or not. So this is something like you literally throw someone into hell. What if they do not like that person? So I'm really hoping for the time when the teenagers will decide for their own life. They will be deciding for their own career, which field to study, and which path to pursue. So yeah, again, uh, there are lives of many girls and teenagers that I cannot describe in words. So hopefully things will change one day.
It sounds like what you're describing is this clashing of cultural beliefs, and this old way of thinking meeting this, that the hope is that a new way of thinking is coming in, and that it will replace the old ways that maybe
Yeah.
are based on just a more traditional way of thinking. I mean, it's something that I've seen here still too. There are many families
Yeah.
where I had it happen at my college, the College of William and Mary, several times, where students felt that they had failed their families or failed in some other way. And it's a horrible thing. And I think these days we see people giving themselves a little grace, and we're learning the language of being true to yourself. And those are all such incredible things, but they don't mesh with what came before. So that's
Yeah.
really incredible. What else, is there anything else from the book that you think is worth mentioning now?
Yeah, I mean, like there is a kind of hostility between the two different mindsets. You know, for example, this new generation, which they call the social media generation, they think differently versus the past generation. I mean, like I'm not against any of these, because both of them are both of the mindsets are good and applicable in their own time, because the things that were applicable like 20 to 50 or 100 years ago are not applicable in this time. So what I always want is to there should be like a balance between the two mindsets. Like there should not be two extremes. Like even there are things that this generation does which I really do not like, because they are at the another extreme. There should be respect for the core values. I mean, those values should be considered, because they're the principles that actually shape our lives. They should be respected and considered while doing other things. But at the same time, we should not forget to move shoulder by shoulder with this fast track world dominated by artificial intelligence. We should be moderate and remain at the core and balance things. Like we should respect the values as well as keep in mind the modernity of today's world. And then what other thing that I emphasize on my book is the space that our elders should give the young generation and the youngsters to speak up, to give their opinions, because like when a teenager is given a space to give his or her opinion, they feel kind of confident and they feel valued, even if their opinion is not applied or accepted. But they still think like, okay, my words are heard, my words are valued, and then that way they get self confidence and self esteem. Second thing is empowering the youngsters to critically think. Like we cannot just always suppress them to just adhere to what the elders want of them or what the society want of. They should be critically they should be critical thinkers. Like they should criticize what is negative, or if there are any flaws. And then because if a teenager is not critical thinker, then there is a time in his or her life that they cannot decide what to do, because mentally they will be dependent. As I just early mentioned, they will be dependent on others. They will be looking for others to come and help. So if they're critically able to think, then they can see like, okay, which way is good for me and which is not. So then they will be kind of mentally independent. And so I mean, like these are the things that I emphasize in my book. And there are like several other issues concerning the factors that halt in inner peace, or the factors that cause inner suffering. But these are the thing like self-confidence, self-esteem, critical thinking, and the ability to counter argue, like not in a disrespectful way but in a respectful way, in a logical way, are the core things that I basically emphasize on in my book.
What I love about this is, as I'm hearing this, it's almost, and perhaps you don't intend it that way, but I am hearing it's like the path forward for Afghanistan, honestly. Because every time I hear about, I know that that's not what, you're talking about a very specific thing here, but there are a couple points that you made that really hit home for me. having listened to Afghans talk about what their future needs to look like. And, you know, the young generation, from everything I've heard, the older generation that, you know, is venerated or is, you know, respected, no one wants the old generation back in power when the Taliban are gone. Nobody
Yeah.
does. They know the younger generation is going to have to be the ones who take power, because the older one is not just weighed down by all of that tradition, but by the corruption and the just so much badness from the prior experience, right? So this
Yes.
young generation needs that confidence and needs to know
Yeah.
that it's your time
Exactly.
and you are needed, and this is the time to say we have appreciated it and we will take, it's like you said, you need, there are some things from the culture that are really important to hold on to,
Yes.
but you have to move forward, because there is no you know, no future for Afghanistan without doing that. And
Yeah.
that's the other part, the modernity aspect of it too. If there is this feeling within Afghans that you say is there, right? These people on social media trying to push the boundaries of society, but obviously they can't go too far because of the Taliban. But if that's there and it's latent and it's waiting, you know, when do we get to see that defeat the hate that the Taliban represent? That's what I want, right? Is the all of that untapped power, all the people who are dissatisfied by oppression and silence and all of that, to stand up and say no, no, we're not gonna. You can't just stand up. It's that's the problem. Is the Taliban
Yeah.
will not be taken away by people standing up.
Yeah.
But it's so heartening to hear that those things are happening and that that conversation and that change is happening, because every Afghan is a valuable person that doesn't
Yeah.
need to be lost to those struggles, just like every person around the world is, you know, and if we can
Yeah.
figure out
Yeah.
how to end that cycle, I think that's so powerful. And I really applaud you for taking the time to do that outside of what you've been pursuing. That's a very important undertaking. Well, I would love to give you the opportunity to have any closing thoughts, any final words, anything I didn't ask that you want to address. It is your floor to take it where you will.
I mean, first of all, I'm really grateful for giving me the space to speak up, and especially about the topic that I really love to speak about. Because though my field is finance and business administration, but I really love to, you know, discuss emotional intelligence, cultural and social issues, especially concerning Afghanistan. But I just want to mention one thing, which is like, you know, there will be people that will counter argue or, you know, backlash my book or the ideas that I have. But just to mention, you know, I'm not like completely opposed to the culture or religion. I'm a spiritual guy myself, but what I always emphasize on is the misinterpretation, which should not be done. The misinterpretation of religion, the misuse of cultural codes or the exploitation of cultural codes, because they're very sacred. The values are really sacred. The religion is really beautiful. All the religions are beautiful. They should be interpreted in the way that is supposed to be. And they should not be used for personal gains, gaining power and wealth, which has been, you know, the mainstream um, the mainstream actions for centuries. This is something which I really, you know, am against. But on the other hand, I'm also against many things that this generation do, because I've observed they are not, you know, following the true values and norms. So they're at the one extreme, and then on the other extreme are those old codes. So I just want a balanced life, a moderate life, you know, just to, you know, like not to harm your soul, your body, and not to harm anybody else by your tongue or by your, hands. So, like when people are safe from your tongue and physically and also verbally, then you are a good human being. So this is what I wanted to mention. So thank you again for this
Yeah.
opportunity to speak.
I value that observation too, but and as you were saying it, I just kept thinking that the one group that's not doing any of that is the Taliban. You know, they won't let
Mhm.
people celebrate traditional Afghan cultural celebrations.
Yeah,
They're squelching all of those things, and so there is no, cultural music can't be played.
yeah.
All of the instruments being
So there are
burned.
like two extremes.
Yeah, exactly. And there has to be the happy medium ground where
Yeah,
people
yes,
can. And Afghanistan is such a multicultural place that obviously there isn't a monolithic culture.
yeah,
You have
yeah,
many different kinds of people who want
yeah,
to, but no one can do that freely now. And so I there are so many there are going to be a lot of big things whenever there is a chance to try a free society in Afghanistan
yeah,
again. There are going to be so many conversations to be had, and I think that's going to be a valuable thing to look at. What do we
yeah,
keep? What do we preserve? What do we. And right now, that's being held in all the Afghans in the diaspora who are holding true to those beliefs, who are living them every day. And
exactly.
it's still there. It's just maybe
True,
not in
true, true.
Afghanistan.
Yeah,
Well, I very much appreciate you making me think about all these things for the first time in a few weeks. It's a really delightful change from that sounds like a weird thing to say. It's a heavy topic, but it's a really nice change from all of the fallout of the executive orders that has been kind of heavy for the last few
yeah,
weeks. This is a different kind of heavy and also really full of possibility, right? There's possibility at the end of the dark road. So thanks so much for coming on
sure.
and joining me.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks to everybody too who listened. If you are not subscribed, make sure you subscribe, enable notifications, do all those fun things. And until next time, Tasha Kaur, and hope to see you soon.